Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 001 Radio Gamescast. We've got a wonderful night planned for everyone today. As always, I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm joined by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Alex.
Hi, Ryan. It's such a pleasure to be here tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Brett.
Hello!
Yeah, there he is, and Wyatt.
We actually heard Alex's introduction this time. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy
like
for
3
him.
weeks.
No, that happened last episode. What are you talking about?
I wasn't there.
Yeah, no, we lost him.
I've been gone for so long.
It's episode number 48. We're pushing close to the year mark. We're getting up there. We've almost survived the entirety of quarantine with this podcast. How wonderful. And that means today we're talking about the best levels and environments, as well as the worst levels and environments, because there's always two sides to that coin. And we're also going to briefly go over some state of play news. There's been a lot of other news in the games industry this week, but most of it is not particularly things that are happening soon. So we're going to kind of push all that back and then talk about the things that actually are big news next week, because there's really not much aside from the state of play. And even in the state of play, we saw a lot of stuff we've already seen. So we'll briefly go over a few new things, but
the state of play was not that much.
Yeah, it was like a mid-tier Nintendo Direct worth of stuff.
That's a good way to put it.
So yeah, like last week when we did a mid-tier Nintendo Direct on the channel.
Hey!
What a callback.
Yep. All right, so we're going to go ahead and kick off our state of play talk. So I'm just going to talk about the things that were bigger, that we saw a lot of new stuff. We saw some decent stuff with Returnal. I don't know if you got much you want to say about Returnal, Wyatt. I know you're our big Returnal pusher on the channel.
Yeah. No, every time they talk about it, every time they show like a trailer or gameplay or something, it always looks good. There's nothing that's like giving me pause. It's giving me weirdly like in terms of just combat and the camera, it's giving me Mass Effect Andromeda vibes, which sounds like a bad thing, but the combat in the game was actually a lot of fun, so that's actually a positive, if you ask me. It looks kind of creepy and weird, and I'm super into it. And I want to see more like narratively driven roguelike games, because Hades proved that you can do that really well. So yeah, pretty excited.
Forgetting, Returnal is the Swedish Jesse Hayden. Yeah.
No, that's the medium. Returnal is space roguelike horror.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it looks really good.
Looking really rad. Still, I still am a fan of the title, unlike Ryan, who's just a party pooper.
Look, I don't dislike it as much as I used to. I'm just not a fan of the push for one-word titles.
Nothing will ever compare to Goo !
Like, Goo ! Was where one-word titles start and end. Like, that is the only acceptable one-word title.
The beginning and the end.
The be-all, end-all is Goo.
We reached the zenith with Goo ! So, I don't know. I think Returnal is a decent title, but not... I just don't like the one-word titles. I don't think it works very well.
I think it depends on the game.
Is there a sweet spot in amount of words per title for you? Because I mean, like there's things with numbers and decimals that get in the way, like Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2.
Well, let's get this out of the way. The best video game title that has ever been released is obviously Immortals Phoenix Rising. That is like peak video game titles. So everything else is just lesser than that.
I mean, you say that jokingly, but to answer Alex's question, I actually think in the range of like 2 to 5 words is the sweet spot. So, Immortals Phoenix Rising right in the middle.
Especially if it has as many colons as possible, if it has the word legends in it, or heroes of some sort.
Or, if your game
recoded
is Undernight Inbirth EXE CL-R late
usually
bracket
throwing
ST.
Reckoning. Usually throwing Reckoning in there always helps, as well as Revengeance is always good to put in there from time to time.
Well, Revengeance is simple because, it's just a 3-word title. is nothing else to that title.
Oh, I'm not poking fun at that title. That's the best title for a video game ever.
I know, but I sincerely wish more games would use Revengeance in their title, because I want to see like a Kingdom Hearts Revengeance.
Oh my god,
what that would look like.
Super Mario Revengeance.
That is the DLC for Odyssey that we will never get.
Oh god.
Waluigi
Bowser's
finally gets his own
Revengeance.
game.
Yep. All right, moving on to keep the pace going. Knockout City got some more gameplay and is actually looking a little bit better this time. I think the not showing Switch gameplay is probably helping, where the frame rates are higher and it
that weird
just looks
trailer.
very clean.
Yeah, I'm glad they got rid of that trailer and actually had the people that made the game talk about it instead of people that had no idea what the game was.
Yeah, especially because Velen is a good studio, and so I did not have faith in that trailer, but looking at the gameplay and seeing who's behind it, I do have a lot of faith in it.
Is
I think
is
they're
this the
solid
case
developers.
with like a lot of games where a completely different company is in charge of making the trailer?
No, actually.
Oh.
So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, did recently learn this. This was just like some poor trailer decision making. They actually talked about this on an AMA they did, and they said the intent was to show that the game is designed for players of every type of game, and like it's meant to be you take a break from your main game and then go play some Knockout City. But that didn't come across. Yeah,
that did not translate at all.
Not a bit.
Yeah, and they kind of admitted that it didn't end up quite as well as they had hoped. But yeah, so we also have some new details about Knockout City that we didn't have last week. It is a $20 game, no loot boxes. So that's always nice to see.
I hate how that's like an exciting. Yeah, that's just what I was gonna say.
It's an exciting thing to say.
Oh god.
I mean, yeah, coming out of
absolutely quivering in my boots.
Velen being made up of a lot of Call of Duty devs, former Call of Duty devs. That's refreshing to hear. But yeah, not much else to say on Knockout City. It comes out May 21. But there's some official betas going around that you can play if you sign up on Velen's website. So, all right, moving on. We got Sifu. So, I don't know who here is like actually interested in Sifu. It's a melee kung fu combat game inspired by Asian action movies. Sifu.
It's called Seafood?
It's called Sifu.
Mayhaps.
Sifu.
Sorry, that
was
a bad joke.
Yeah, it was. Sifu is the kind of game that I see. I'm pretty impressed, and it's made by a fairly small team called Slow Clap. Now, I don't know if people here know what Slow Clap did before.
I do.
It was a little wonderful indie game called Absolver. Which is this super cool combat, like not deck building, but you essentially have a ton of moves and you get to build out your combo chains. It had a ton of really cool, like Dark Soulsy style multiplayer stuff going on with a lot of duels, as well as some cool like melee fights. I think if Sifu comes close to the combat prowess of Absolver without all the weird like multiplayer not necessarily working things that Absolver had, I think it's probably going to be pretty good. Yeah, especially because they can just take a lot of the stuff they used from Absolver being like inspired by martial combat styles. They can probably just port a lot of that over into Sifu. It certainly looks like it's running in the same hardware, back end type stuff. So
it also looks amazing.
I was gonna say it has a really nice aesthetic to it.
It's Absolver style, but with actual faces instead of masks, which is cool to see.
Didn't they also do Ashen as well, or am I making that up?
Ashen just looked like it. I don't believe Slow Clap did Ashen.
I remember because I did mix up these two games when you were recommending one of them to me.
Yeah, so Ashen was developed by A44, not
Gotcha.
Slow Clap.
Yeah. They're also both under Annapurna, also, I think.
Of course, because Annapurna collects some good indie games.
They really do.
And speaking of good indie games...
Yay!
Hey, Brett, you want to take it away?
Finally, I get to see more than the same 4 seconds of Solar Ash over and over again, which I used to do every night before I went to bed, is watch the same 4 seconds of Solar Ash footage over and over again to keep me sane. But now I have like 5 more minutes of Solar Ash footage to look at before it comes out later this year, and it looks really good.
Are those frames out? You don't want to go cold turkey.
But like Really, really good. I was surprised how much different than Hyper Light Drifter it is, because it's the same. It's Heart Machine, so it's the same studio that made Hyper Light. And everyone just kind of assumed, because they didn't really say too much about it, that it was just going to be a 3D Hyper Light game. But no, there's like Shadow of the Colossus bosses and like skating around the map at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it looks amazing visually.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I'm
Wonderful
all
art
in.
style. Looks fairly pathless-like in how the movement works, at least to a small degree, with the speed everyone was going at and whatnot while playing the demo. So, yeah, I think it definitely looks really, really cool. I'm very excited to see what it is when it comes out later this year.
Super pumped.
So, assuming it doesn't get delayed.
Yeah.
All right, there was a new Five
Jeez.
Nights at Freddy's game announced. It's actually a game this time. Like, it's
I
not.
think I saw something about that. Yeah, like you're a person walking around.
Yeah, it's like a proper exploration horror game. Atmospheric horror is probably a good term.
We were gonna do the bit where we just say that they showed it and then we just move on.
Oh, well, I was
We
going
have,
to, but there actually
say
are some
about it.
things to talk about with this that are interesting, like them moving
okay.
into actual like proper horror game movement and whatnot. Like it's clearly got a much higher budget for, I assume, very obvious reasons.
One of the shots that they showed was one of the animatronics breaking through a fence or something like that.
Yeah.
And it feels way too similar to either what was it? A Mr. X animation from
Yeah.
Resident Evil, him breaking through the wall, or something I saw in a Cyberpunk trailer.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like an eerily similar breaking animation.
it was probably inspired. I think most of those are inspired by some old Terminator. I can't remember if it is in Terminator, but there's an old 80s movie that has a very similar like wall breakthrough moment. It's something from that era that was pretty popular. I just can't remember the name. Or if it was actually Terminator, it might be Terminator for all I remember. Maybe it's RoboCop, where someone busts through a wall with that same like pose. So yeah, I think it's probably all harkening back to that. It's an interesting leap for the series. A little concerning because like, man, the frame rate was bad. Real bad.
Doesn't look very good in general, I don't think. Maybe
I think
that's
the
just
lighting
me.
looks pretty good, but the rest of it
I
is.
actually
Was it-
disagree.
At least like the
Play on a
laser
Switch?
lighting.
I don't think we've seen enough gameplay to really like judge though. Like it's been this weird mix of like some like in-game cinematic stuff with
Yeah.
some gameplay, but we really just haven't seen enough for me to like make a judgment, I guess, or like make a call. I don't really care for the series too much. So I don't think, regardless of what it's gonna do, I don't think it's gonna interest me at all. But looking at it, I don't think we've seen enough gameplay to really like pass judgment.
And important note here, we didn't get a date for this, and a lot of other things. This presentation got dates, like Sifu, we know is coming out this year. Knockout City May 21st, Returnal April 30th. Like pretty much everything else has dates. So this, I would assume, because it doesn't, is pretty far off. That would be a weird thing to omit. Otherwise, yeah. All right, moving on. Oddworld Soulstorm again. Yep, moving on.
I will say, because Ryan and I were watching most of this presentation together, and one thing we both agreed on is this is a game where like we've seen, it's like that effect of like we've seen too much of it now, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
we're just ready for this to come out, and everything you're going to show us now we've already seen 1,000
Hey,
times.
hey, Wyatt, you know what else was like that? Deathloop. We saw Deathloop again. All right, moving on.
Yeah, yeah. No, every time I see Deathloop, I'm like, okay, it's coming out. Got it.
It's already sold me. I don't need.
I did
I don't need to know anymore.
Yeah.
The only thing I still want to know is like what, or if there's any multiplayer stuff, because they haven't given a straight answer about the whole 2-person thing, as far
Whether
as I'm
that's,
aware.
like, multiplayer or not.
I say that
just assumed
now.
it was. I just assumed it was.
Well, because they originally made it sound like it was, and then they made it sound like it wasn't, so I'm confused. Yeah, they did show a shot of you like fighting the other person in this trailer, but it really wasn't tellable if that was an AI or a person. So, all right, moving past that, we saw Kana again, and we also saw some more gameplay, and we got a release date of August 24th.
That's my other like That's another game that I'm really looking forward
This game
to.
looks wonderful.
This year.
Like,
It looks. I keep saying this every time I look at footage of it. It so perfectly resembles like a modern Pixar movie. Like they got that look down so well.
yeah.
And that's not even like a criticism. It looks wonderful visually.
Why would that be a criticism? Why?
Well, I think a lot of people could see it as like, oh, it's just that they're not doing their own thing. They're like ripping off of something else. But
I mean, we're getting a video game that looks like that. Like that's incredible.
No, yeah, and it's not just that either. But like the setting looks great too. Those adorable little like, are those like the little spirit creatures or whatever? Oh my god, they're so cute. It's this like dense kind of forest looking aesthetic. I love all of like the costume designs, the villain designs, like the enemy designs look great. They remind me a lot of Remnant from the Ashes, which is a good thing because it had some really cool monster design in that game. Yeah, super pumped. I'm sold.
It almost looks very like Totoro and Mononoke-esque as well.
Yeah. Well, they just there was Ghibli just released their first like 3D animated like movie that looks a lot like that from some shots and angles. So
All right, moving past that because obviously we all love Kana, but I want to get through news relatively quickly. Our last like big piece of stuff from the last thing in the state of play, Final Fantasy 15 is getting a PS5 upgrade, and to everyone's surprise, it will be free. Square Enix is not known for making that decision, with one exception.
I was gonna say,
if you Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be the PS Plus game for March, one of them. If you get the PS Plus version, you will not get a free upgrade to the PS5 version. Now, I think that was I have a feeling that was probably the only way Sony could get FF7 Remake as a PlayStation Plus game, considering it's so recently after it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm betting that was the stipulation of like, yeah, we cannot offer the upgrade free to people because that's like, I'm imagining the massive hit that would lead to Square Enix's bottom line, and I don't think they would be okay with that. And I doubt Sony would be willing to pay out that much money to guarantee that they would do that. But for owners of Remake that buy the game on the store or physical copy, not through PS Plus, they will get a free upgrade to the PS5 version. We're also getting some DLC, which is a paid DLC. There was a little confusion around this. You can get the DLC separately from the game, so if you have the free upgrade, you don't need to buy the game again to get the DLC. You just need to buy the DLC. We don't know the price for the DLC on its own yet, but it stars Yuffie, so we're getting some more classic 7 characters in Remake. Fun. All right, moving on. Unless anyone else wants to talk about Yuffie being in FF7 Remake.
Hey, look, a Moogle!
Hey, look, a Moogle! Good King Muggle. All right.
Oh.
So, the other major event that kind of happened was the Pokemon thing. None of us here are huge Pokemon fans.
Not anymore.
Yeah, like, we're not all actively keeping up with it. I'll briefly mention that, like, we got the Sinnoh remakes announced, the Diamond and Pearl, Shining Diamond, and, like, Sparkle Pearl, or whatever it is. I don't remember the actual name for Pearl. But they made some interesting visual choices. You know, they're the tuned down 3D of like the 3DS Pokemon games, and they're very chibi. I'm not liking it as much as the pixel art. I think it looks pretty bad. Not like it's a bad game art style, but it's just like, for Pokemon, it's something that I don't really want to keep seeing, and I think it looks notably worse than the sprite art.
I'm still unbelievably worried about like for not caring about it. I'm still unbelievably worried about their workflow and just how crappy some of the textures look.
Well, an important note here is that the remakes are being done by a different team. They are not being done by Game Freak. They're being done by ICLA, I believe is their name. A studio that is just like handling these like remakes with oversight from Game Freak, but Game Freak is not officially handling them.
Okay, because I could have sworn I saw the same reused, very low res tree texture.
I mean, that's
from
totally
the
possible.
Sword and Shield games,
That's
which
totally
I'm
possible.
more than disappointed in.
So yeah, we're getting those remakes this year. Opinions are pretty split on them right now, just because we haven't seen enough. I think there's evidence that they'll probably include the platinum features that made the games better. But yeah, the visual style is just
so
not that interesting.
Those base games are so empty without the platinum
Yeah.
things. Boy, do I love only having 5 fire.
Yeah, so in the trailer, people did see that there were platinum NPCs in the game.
Okay.
So the assumption is that it will include platinum enhancements. They're just retaining the 2 separate versions for the sake of being Pokemon and needing as much money as possible.
Of course.
We also got the announcement of Legends of Arceus, which is a Pokemon prequel era game set in ancient Japan Sinnoh, where you're running around in ancient Japan and grabbing some Pokemon Breath of the Wild style. This is what people thought that the Galar games might be. So it's exciting as a shift of things for Game Freak, but at the same time, it ran at like 10 frames a second. There were some very noticeable issues.
This is rough. This looks a little rough.
But it's not coming out till 2022, which I'm betting that date might end up getting pushed back to 2023 from what they showed there, unless it's either the very end of 2022 or I'm betting 2023 because looks rough.
Some of these trees look kind of bad too. Wow.
It was Legend of Arceus that I was seeing the tree texture on.
Yeah,
not the gem. I don't think I've seen stuff from Diamond and Pearl remakes then.
Yeah, the Diamond and Pearl remakes aren't amazing looking, but they're, if they're not full price, I might grab one eventually, but I don't have a lot of...
They will never not be full price, Ryan. This is Nintendo.
That's my concern. Oh, this is Game Freak. This has nothing to do with Nintendo.
Also, you have a combat role?
They're just a small indie company. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so we don't fully know details about Legends of Arceus yet. There have been like 2 versions of it talked about. There's one that supposedly it might be mostly real time, and like the battles are actually real time battles. The other is that the overworld stuff is all real time, and then the fights themselves will go back to being like active time battle. So either way, people aren't expecting this to be fully turn based. It looks like it might be riffing on kind of like some Final Fantasy stylistic things from the last couple of generations of Final Fantasy games. So, I mean, neat. We'll see what it looks like in a year.
Another thing that I don't know if concerned is even the right word anymore. That I've noticed, and that I've noticed from seeing tricks of people present games in the past, much notably game presentations that we've been a part of. There's a lot of 2D stuff in there and not gameplay.
Yeah,
a lot of 2D.
It is definitely a lot of concept footage, I think. It's not really...
a lot of cover up.
Again, I'm looking at it right now. I'm kind of surprised they showed this off at all. This doesn't look like...
I think the reason they showed it off is they wanted to show people they were doing something different. Because Game Freak has been on blast recently for not doing that.
Okay.
But it's footage from January. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right, so I am going to stop this so we can... I'm going to stop the Pokemon talk so we can move on, because we got a main topic this episode. I want to get to it.
We have stuff to do, right?
And again, this game's not coming out for at least a year, so we'll judge it when it's closer to release. Right now, it was probably just a teaser trailer, to be honest.
We'll wait till it loses its creative director twice.
Good try. Good try. All right. So
We
got a game to play this episode. We're going back to the old school games of the Double M Radio Gamescast. And this is the Double M Radio Gamescast finalist Fantastical Fantasy Challenge. So what I'm going to have each of you do, this game will span multiple episodes. It is not a one and done game. Each of my other hosts here is going to be given a Final Fantasy side character, and they will come up with a story for that character. All right, we're going to have them guess. If they want to, they can guess the actual character arc, or they can just make one themselves that they think is fun. And then we will, at the end, reveal, share, and compare to the actual stories. So at this point, I'm going to ask all of my hosts to leave and go to the other Discord channel, and I will pull you in once I have explained the rules. Also, leave the Twitch if you're watching the Twitch. Close that tab. Don't be on there. I don't want anything being given away. So,
viewer count goes down to 0.
Yep. Meteor timer. The Majora's Moon is now impacting. Get in the other channel, all of you. Quiet. All right, great. So, while they're in there, viewers, I have to share some special rules with this game. So there are a few special rules. Most notably, 2 of the characters we'll be talking about are not real Final Fantasy characters. You'll know very clearly when I say them, and they're not real Final Fantasy characters, because they sound either ridiculous or they just don't ring any bells. So, we have 1 real character, which will be Brett's character, but the rest, completely fake. The other hosts don't know this, and I want to keep it that way. So we will show them eventually when we get to that, and see what they come up with. The other rules, they're going to each have 60 seconds to describe the starting arc of this character. So we're going to start with Alex. Alex, you're in the hot seat. Are you ready?
Oh, hi!
So I'm going to send you your character image right now.
All
Actually, as soon as I get your Discord pulled up, that's when I'll send it to you.
Alrighty.
Actually do it.
This is just their
So I'm going to send you a PNG, and I'll tell you the name of this character in like a cursory detail, and I want you to come up with the starting point for this character. What is their starting point for adventure? I'll tell you when your timer starts. You'll have 60 seconds. So this character that I just shown you an image of, and viewers, you will get to see these images when we hit the final arc. This character is a character from Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, named Ibarella. All right. And as you can see, she's surrounded by many dolls.
Okay, those are dolls. Those aren't people.
Those are dolls. Yes, those are dolls. I can confirm they are dolls. They are not real people.
I'm considering that they are actually people, and you're lying to keep something from me.
No. They are dolls. I will give you that detail. I'm not going to tell you if this is the start point, the end point, or the middle point of her character arc.
If this is the end point, I'm going to be horrified.
So, I would like you to tell me, I'm going to start your timer in a few seconds. I'll tell you exactly when, but your goal, tell me the starting point of this character. What is their first side quest, right? The first chain part of their side quest missions. What would that be? You can try to think of what it actually would be. You can make up something fun. So, your time starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so what it looks like here is you're meeting this character in a very haunted mansion, or at the end of a very suspect dungeon here, and there's no loot or anything. She's just sitting in the corner with all these creepy red and blue dressed dolls circling around her. And she looks very calm, and not like she's being haunted or anything. Maybe like she's doing the haunting. She might be a ghost, maybe not. Maybe who knows if she's dead? She's here right now, but oh boy,
20 seconds left.
Oh god. So I think there's going to be one side quest for each of these dolls, and there's a certain item you need to get. What you don't know is these items are something significant to creating a ritual of some sort that she wants to create, that she's possibly not telling you everything about.
All right, there is your starting point for the story of Ibarella. So Alex, I'm going to put you back in the other channel and then pull someone else in, and we will revisit this arc next time we do this game, and you will tell us the middle point of this character.
Okay, that was nerve-wracking.
Brett.
Hello.
Are you ready to be given your image? Now, I gotta grab this because this image is a little bit painful to look at.
No.
I found you a real winner. So
winner.
I hope you enjoy this.
I assume you've explained, yes.
I've explained the rules and everything. The audience knows what's going on.
Good.
For context, Brett is in on it.
Oh,
I'll leave it at that. I need to re-look up this fan art because the link I have isn't working. So let me re-grab it. Oh, there it is. I see it. It's beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna send this to you in a DM so no one else gets it spoiled yet. This is a Final Fantasy VII character.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
From Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Oh, okay.
And as you can see, his name is Johnny.
That is up for no dispute there. That's
This is not what the character actually looks like. This is just some iffy fan art.
How close is it to what he looks like?
You know what? For the sake of this, I will send you a cutout image of what he actually looks like so that you have, but I want you to plan your character arc off of the other image.
Of that, yes,
because
I see.
That is more fitting for personality. That is what his character model is.
That's so boring. Like, who cares about that? I only
but
care
his
about...
personality is far more in line with the first image I sent you. And again, the audience will see all of these once we get to the final round of this game. So, Brett, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to tell me the starting point of this character's journey. So, assume that he has 3 side missions related to him, or 3 major story appearances. What is the first major story appearance for this side character? Your time starts now.
All right, so the main party in Final Fantasy VII is running around Midgar, right? And in the middle of the street, Cloud saves someone from getting hit by a car, and it's Johnny.
Okay.
And Cloud's like, what are you doing, man? Like, you just almost got hit by that car, as Cloud would of course say. And Johnny goes, can you help me? I woke up with this spiral on my thumb, and I've lost all my memories. All I see is this spiral on my thumb. I don't know where I am. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you have a big sword on your back. That's kind of scary. What's going on?
20 seconds left.
And yeah, then he becomes a guest character for a little bit until you find a place with him that he recognizes as his apartment building, and then you bring him home, and you don't see him for a little while after that.
All right,
that's Johnny's story.
Perfectly on time. So that is the starting point of Johnny's story, according to you.
Mm-hmm.
Brett, good job. I'm gonna put you back in the other channel and pull in Wyatt.
Oh, thank God.
All right, Wyatt, are you ready to tell me the story of a Final Fantasy character?
I am.
So,
where are you sending this picture?
I'm just going to DM it to you.
Okay.
I'm going to end up sending you just a weird test DM first so I can actually open the chat. There is your image, so you get a few seconds to think about what this character's story would be. For context, this is a Final Fantasy VII character. Okay. Of course, some fan art of a Final Fantasy VII character because we don't want to make it too easy.
Okay.
Now,
so I'm just doing Act 1 of his.
Act
journey,
1. What is when the characters first meet this individual? What is the reason that they need to do something for him, or what is he doing with them? And for context, this character's name is Mithril Mike. If that name seems ridiculous, I want you to remember the main character of Final Fantasy VII is called Cloud Strife.
Mithril Mike. Okay.
All right. So Mithril Mike saunters up to the party. What is his starting point? Your time starts now.
So Cloud and his gaggle of buddies have to get into this facility for some reason, and this guy is like, "Hey, I have this Bane style thing around my mouth. They basically took my ability to speak, and now it's been completely replaced with this weird metal face diaper that I have on my face."
Okay.
So he says, "I will help you get into the facility. I'll be like an extra, I'll be an extra pair of, I'll be an extra sword to the party and help you guys just like blow through these guys in order to get in there because I want my revengeance."
He wants revengeance. All right, I like it.
Yeah. And so
15 seconds
afterwards. Yep. So they get in and they blow a bunch of stuff up. And then he begins to enact his revenge, but it turns out the guy that's running this facility is part of this ancient order of evil people that Cloud is going after, and he escapes, and Mithril Mike is like, yo, I will join you guys and help you on your adventure because it'll get me closer to this guy, and I could join your party, and so it's a lot safer to get to him that way.
All right, so you're saying he's a party
Bam.
member. Okay.
Sure. Why
All
not?
right, let's pull everyone else back in and resume our normal episode. So I'm going off of what
Wyatt.
what I just did. I'm going to say the award for this episode goes to Wyatt for getting startlingly close to the plot of Final Fantasy VII.
Oh,
No way.
Really?
For the starting point.
Okay.
You kind of described a plot point of Final Fantasy VII almost perfectly.
I'm afraid.
Which I love because
Okay.
you've never played
So
it.
are we gonna share with the class what our stories were now, or
Not
are we
yet.
just gonna leave it?
We will share the
Okay.
completed stories
Okay,
when all three
I
are done.
see.
So you will
Okay.
have to wait in suspense until then. And of course, I will be showing images to everyone of all three characters when we get to that point. But I want you guys to just sit in the knowledge of what you have done. What you have created.
What war crimes we have committed.
All right. So now that that's done with, let's get to the actual episode, which is best and worst levels in environments in games. Does someone have a burning level, Brett?
I have. Well, funny that you'd ask because I have the biggest list I've ever made for one of these episodes of things.
My God.
With asterisks next to the ones that I would like to actually talk about because there are too many to actually talk about.
Wow.
So I
You'll
think
probably hit on mine.
we should. I think we should start with the bad, so we could end off on a good note, right?
All
Is
right.
that
Go for it.
So we're gonna start with. I'm gonna start with an easy one. Infamous, to anyone that has played the Halo series of games, and it's just not fun. Halo 1, the library is just a bad.
Oh
It's a bad
God,
time.
that was on my list too.
Well, we maybe we could have some back and forth here then, because it doesn't. I because both from just like a playing the mission standpoint and specifically like looking at the environment standpoint, it is boring, and it is boring
And also, you constantly feel like you're just going in circles because
because
to
you
anyone,
are.
just to catch someone up on if they don't know what this level is, it is basically the same environment repeated like 7, 8 times,
I think it's
something
8.
like that. 8 times. It's this interior. It's like some Forerunner architecture in the Halo ring, right? And
Yeah.
you're just fighting Flood, and they're not fun to fight in Halo 1. I'm just gonna say it. I did not have fun fighting them in Halo 1. From my memory. And you're just fighting them and you're following Guilty Spark, and it's just the same 3, it's like the same area, it's like 3 main areas repeated 8 times. And that's it.
Yeah.
There's that's it. Like narratively, from what I remember, there isn't a whole lot going on, and you're just fighting the most obnoxious faction in the game. So
And you also have 343 Guilty Spark humming in your ear annoyingly the whole time too.
yes.
And
And like I said before, because it's literally the same area over and over and over again, you're not sure if you're going in the right direction or not.
yeah.
Yep.
And
It's
there's
probably one
rocket
of the
launcher flood.
worst. It's probably one of the worst examples of like padding out a game that I've ever seen.
And it's especially weird because like that's like beyond worse. That is beyond worse hallway syndrome than you would see in Halo 4 or 5. But the same game, Halo 1, also has the
Silent
level.
Cartographer.
Yes, which is spoilers for later. Silent Cartographer and Halo, which are two really big open missions that are like what people think of as like the blueprint for the other best parts of the series.
Yeah.
And it's just weird to also have the library be there and to just be a horrible, awful, terrible mess.
The only way it could have been worse is if they had rocket launcher grunts. It's the only way it could have been worse.
But that's the thing, they have fuel rod grunts later, and they're not as bad as the rocket launcher flood that has pinpoint
what makes them
accuracy.
bad? Okay, to be clear, them in a vacuum is fine. It's where they were placed in Combat Evolved that made them suck, because you're in these like tight hallways.
Yeah.
And they kind of suck. But yeah. And I'm going to say it again, I did not enjoy fighting the Flood that much in Halo 1. I just think they're kind of annoying.
I don't like the flood in general, to be honest with you. They're probably my least favorite parts of the Halo games. But 1 is definitely the worst showing of them. As cool of a twist as they are in concept,
They have a great introduction.
they do. It's super sick, but that any gameplay against them is they're spongy on purpose, but it's like, come on, man.
They're just not fun.
All right. So I'm gonna say, Alex, you got a burning worst environment or level that you've played that you really need to get it out there.
I'm gonna this stems from everyone's favorite bad level. But it's not specifically this, though it does go from it. Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. I am
a lot of water temples in general.
Yeah,
water anything.
Water temples. I like, games that are open world, or not even necessarily open world, but allow you pretty decent sized sections of open roaming where you can do things in any order. I think the most recent version that I can tell like this, because was I think it was it's things like where a game isn't specifically and only focused on underwater travel and exploration, and even in somewhere it is, I really don't enjoy underwater travel like that. Like in games like Subnautica, I think it's done pretty well, though I still, and this is also a personal problem, getting vertigo and nausea from it being hard to tell which way's up. There's that. Funnily enough, the game that I'm talking about also has my favorite levels. But the most recent one that I just hated underwater in was Uncharted 4. I think it's one of the earliest levels where you just it drops you into some scuba gear, and the environments look beautiful, but I hate travel underwater.
That's fair. I actually really, just to butt in, I actually really like that level because of how it's framed in the story, because it gives you the impression that he's on this other adventure across the world or something like that, and it kind of is like, oh, he's going on another Nathan Drake adventure, same old Nathan Drake. No, and then it turns out it's just
salvage.
in the Hudson River or something like that, and he's picking up salvage.
Yeah. Which,
and it's great.
There's an impressive amount of coral in the Hudson River.
And not
death. but it's a great reveal, because you're like, oh, he's on some job or something. He hooks up some salvage to this crane that comes down, and then when you're pulled up, you're not in some
What's the treasure? It's copper wire, which is actually really valuable.
Yeah, you hook yourself up to the crane, and then it pulls you above the water, and you're not some crazy exotic location. You're in New York or Boston, something like that.
Yeah, you're on a salvage crew. It's your
narratively
job.
I think narratively it's a great little
Yeah, narratively, Uncharted 4 is one of my favorite games, and I think will always be.
But the physical level is just not your favorite, because vertigo and because it sounds like the reasons.
That's fair.
It's the traversal, and in things like Ocarina of Time, it's definitely the sameness of textures that give me the big problem.
I mean, Ocarina also has the issue of the water temple is some cool design on paper, but when you're actually doing it, it becomes very obtuse.
Well, I've played both versions. I played the N64 version emulated, and I've played the 3DS version, and both of them just rub me the wrong way.
Yeah, I think it's a design that doesn't translate well to an actual game, but sounds good on paper. All right, and so just to add, because I think we it sounds like we have a lot of things to talk about, so I'm going to start timing our talks about specific levels and start moving on if we go past 3 minutes on a level, because that seems to be about as long as we're going on each of these, and I think that seems like a good amount of time. So Wyatt, you got a worst level?
Worst level. God, I had one primed for best level. So, do you mind if I actually just talk about that instead of worst level?
I do mind, Wyatt. We're gonna do a round of worst, and then we're gonna do a round of bests. We're gonna do
ending on a good note. Ending on a good note.
Well, we're not just doing one round. We can talk about many of these. We have an hour left in the show. We can do as much as we want.
I will get through my whole
For
list.
once,
wow!
we're actually staying at a relatively good time span. So,
God, it caught me off guard because I had something else completely queued up. Shoot. Well, there's been I've been ranting about this with Ryan recently, so this one's far more recent. But I'm still getting through Age of Calamity, and there's some missions that get a little funky, a little stupid with how much crap they throw at you. So there's a mission where you're supposed to get through this area in a certain amount of time, and then a boss shows up at the end. You're like, okay, this seems pretty reasonable. You're still on the clock, and then they start throwing all these mini bosses at you at the same time. And if you go back, like you grind a little bit and then you go back and play, it's not the biggest deal in the world. The problem is that it's just, even if it's easy, it's annoying because you're trying to focus on this one guy because you're on a time limit and you're trying to, defeat him before the time runs out. But you have like all these mini bosses with their own stuff going on, and they're like attacking you from out of your line of sight and stuff like that. And so it's, again, even if it's easy, it's just super annoying and it's not a fun mission
yeah,
to
I
play.
will
You do
say,
it just to get the loot and stuff like that, but it's
I think
not
that the biggest issue with that mission, it seems like like Hyrule Warriors says a recommended level next to each mission, and usually it's pretty good. In that particular mission, it really seems like that they should have pushed that up by like 5 or 6 levels.
Yeah, that's the first problem. But again, even if you go back and you're like 10 levels above it or something and it's pretty easy, it's still not fun because it's annoying because you still have all these guys that are just pestering you while you're trying to focus on one guy. And I'm not kidding.
That's where
It's
I gotta actually disagree with you, Wyatt. So I went and replayed that specific level, and I think the reason it's okay, it's a side mission, and I don't want to spoil the story mission that does this. There is a story mission that doesn't. I think it's a lot worse there, because it is not a side content thing. It's something you have to do. But because I've been playing a lot of like MMOs and whatnot lately, and games that do that kind of progression of where instead of making you face just like more difficult or more like health enemies, they start throwing more at you that you have to think about. And I found that level, doing it like 5 or 6 levels above, meant that it wasn't too much to handle, and instead it was a lot more fun, like trying to actively dodge and like unlock my camera and look around and make sure I was like knowing where everything in the room was very helpful. I think that was fun. But I think the other point they do it in the game is much worse and not very fun. So I agree with you on like what is bad about it. I think in that specific mission, it's maybe not too terrible if they just bump the recommended level up to actually reflect how difficult it is.
And I also want to say, like, I understand that it's a Muso game, and a lot of fans of that genre like that kind of thing, and I totally get that. I'm just speaking personally, not a fan of when they just throw a ton of crap at you. It doesn't feel like smartly designed at all. It just feels kind of cheap. So there's
All
there's
right.
that. That one's been really bothering me recently.
Well, now it's out in the world. It can bother the world now, Wyatt. It's their problem. So
and it will.
Should be proud.
Right. That's right.
All right. So I have this sounds not particularly unique because it's a type of level. It's not even one level. It is a sequence of types of levels in any game. Poison levels. Anytime I play a poison level, and specifically with the worst ones, I think are Dark Souls. Has
I knew it was coming.
Blight Town. It's got the Swamp Village in the second game. The third game has the Swamp. The third game Swamp isn't as annoying because they changed poison, so it's not like it builds up and you have a lot more time to like counteract it. They do a much better job of like placing the items you need to counteract. But in the first and second games, you don't really have a good amount of counters to poison when you get to the poison areas.
Harvest Valley on my list.
Worse.
Ooh, Harvest. Yep, that's it. Man, I hate those
Gray and
levels.
green.
I hate those levels so much. I also played a dungeon in FF14 that does the same trash, where it has giant poison pools everywhere. And I get it. I get that it's supposed to be a mechanic. It does make it more challenging, but it's not very fun. I don't like poison. I don't like poison
I'm sad
in
to hear your
environments.
hatred for the Street Fighter character, Ryan.
Yep, I lost a lot of matches to poison, so still stand that I hate poison. But specifically, I think the Dark Souls levels are very bad at it, because I don't mind poison as like a status effect, but when it's tied to environmental progression, and especially when it's like in an area where enemies can just kind of knock you into it without you ever seeing them, I get very
and also
frustrated.
don't get affected by it.
Oh yeah, that's the big thing. When enemies don't play by the same rules.
Yeah,
it's not super fun.
If I can hop in also, just
Go
because
ahead.
Harvest Valley was on my, instead of worst, I just said kill. So on my kill list, it's like not so much with Blight Town, even though it is ugly, but like Harvest Valley is so disgusting looking, and not like because it's a poison area, so yeah, it's supposed to be gross, but just like everything is gray, and then there are just green clouds everywhere, like neon green. It is horrible looking. It is horrible looking, and I hate it.
Yeah, that's
and
the
I
other
like
thing
that
I was going to
game
say about
too.
poison levels, is poison levels also tend to look really bad.
Yeah.
Like, they just have no color. Even, like, Dark Souls 3 does the same thing, where the swamp is one of the most boring zones compared to everything else, because it's just brown. It's just muck everywhere.
Uh-oh, we're in Brown Town.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I want, the swamp is just a giant pile of poo. I don't want to step in it. Right?
Literally.
Yeah. Alright, so Brett, I'm going to ask you now. You got a good level you want to talk about?
Yes. Why is your good level assault on the control room? Because if it is, I won't talk about it yet.
Is it still what?
Is it assault on the control room? Is that your good level that you wanted to talk about?
Not the one I had in mind. So go for it.
Okay. Oh boy. I to go it's the same game as the library, but it's like the greatest mission ever. And I'm a sucker for snow levels. I love snow levels, and like I kind of mush it together with Silent Cartographer in my brain, which happens right beforehand, where you're on the big island to try to get
Which
to
is my personal favorite.
which they're like tied for me.
Yeah.
But like Assault on the control room, like man, you cover so much ground that it feels like 5 separate missions, but it's just one, and it's so much fun. You get hogs, you get tanks, you get marines, you get everything. You get to blow up every single thing that made you annoyed previous in the game with a tank, and then they stop living, and it's awesome. And it's snowing for some reason, so like you get exposed to like the cool part of like foreigner technology literally being able to change the weather on their own ring planet. Like it's wild, and the music also. I would think I would be fine considering music being the part of the levels that we're talking about, because like I
absolutely.
can't imagine playing Assault on the Control Room without the music playing. Like that contributes so much to its like wintry, snowy feel, and it just makes you feel like a badass.
Yeah, I do want to add one thing to the Halo level discussion, because I haven't played Halo Combat Evolved in a long time, so I don't want to add to the like actual level design. But the one thing I remember loving about the first like few Halo games and the Forerunner levels is that they're all like brutalistic concrete that looks worn.
Oh,
and I think
God.
that is one of the most like, not necessarily disappointing, but the stylistic changes in 4 that I wasn't a huge fan of Forerunner tech now being all very shiny and like well preserved and like more Mass Effect looking than these ancient like very brutalistic weird like alien ruins, which they used to be in Combat Evolved, and they're going back to that in Infinite, which I'm super excited for.
Thank God.
Yeah, I'm glad about that.
It really, like the neon stuff, it legitimately looks like it is from a different game. Like it just does not fit, and it's weird for it to have been changed in such a way, because it made all of these things that used to be monolithic and imposing and super like hard to grasp how something can be built that looks like that. It just turned into oh well, this is sci-fi typical neon glow time. Okay, I don't care anymore.
All right,
it's a shame.
Is that all you got for that level, Brett?
That's all I got.
All right, you know what? I'll save. I have another Halo level in mind, but I'll just save that for my.
Yeah, we're coming around to you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Alex, you got something, Alex?
Well, I absolutely do. My all-time favorite type of level. Yeah, once again, type of level, and Well, yeah, no. Also, in the same game as Uncharted, train levels.
Ooh,
Oh yeah.
those are fun.
Love me some train levels. Love them. I think it's really a test of a good game developer to see what they can do with a narrow corridor of several separate sections of moving corridor. Really, um, you get to in the background in really good ones. You get to show off amazing environment design as it goes by. You can have some really strange enemies to fight. There's interesting how cover can vary because you can have passenger cars, you can have uh, things carrying freight, things like that. Uh, Fighting a helicopter while jumping from train car to train car, very fun. And then there's the like there's always that time issue objective. Like we need to get to the engine room before they get here before this happens, and it's a very nice culmination of a lot of good aspects of games
I think they did a
from
really
good
good
studios.
job. Yeah, I think they did a really good job of just taking full advantage of having a level on a train. And they just like, what can we do with that will make it an interesting level, even though it's essentially, like you said, a corridor. And I think they did such a good job
Yeah.
with that.
And there's the moving train levels, and then there's the one in Uncharted 2 that you start in. That's the cold open,
that's
and it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
One of the best like starts to a video game for me to this day.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
It's excellent.
I never finished Uncharted 2, but I always remember that scene. Like that scene has not left my memory. And I think it's the only part of that game I played so far.
And it's one of the few examples I think where, because one thing that I tend to dislike is when a story, it's like, oh, it's going to start off in the middle of the story and then start back at the beginning. And then you notice that it gets back to the beginning point, like it kind of loops around. And there's usually no reason to it other than just like we want to start with a big action scene from the middle of the movie. But I feel like here it's actually really well done because in the back of your mind, you're like, how did he get in that? Because it's such a dramatic location, right?
oh yeah.
And so in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, like how am I going to get there? And then they kind of tease it like, okay, maybe this is how you get there, and then it's not that at all. They just do such a good job of like building up to it. Whereas I feel like other times that games or movies or books or whatever, when they do it, it just feels kind of like cheap and almost like a way to reuse footage to like extend the runtime a little bit. But here I feel like it's like properly used. It's
Oh
really
yeah, and
well
once you
done.
finally get on the train before that happens, it is there's so many good story beats in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to give a special shout out to Hitman 3 as a train level, which is
They
such a
do.
it's a drastic
yeah.
departure from, because like Hitman levels are known for being super open, very explorable with tons of nooks and crannies, and then to be thrust into a train level where there is one pathway you can go forward and that's it.
That's pretty sick.
And try to figure
you-
out like what to do.
Can you get up out of the train cars?
See, it almost treats each train car as like a puzzle box of trying to figure out what the
Ooh.
solution to that specific scenario is. Of like you walk into the next room, you see what is going on in that car, and you're like, okay, how can I either bypass this? Do I go in guns blazing and like just make a ruckus? Can I get outside the train car and like move around?
I
There's
gotta
some
get it now, right?
really,
I gotta
really
get
fun
Hitman
stuff
3.
in that level. Especially because it's like one of the final sequences of the game. It is very, very fun because there's a lot of like narrative weight behind it as well. But it was such a departure from the normal Hitman design that it stood out really well.
Would you look at that? I'm incredibly hype.
Yep. Wyatt, I know you're
Yeah.
holding
Well, actually, yeah. Well, I had one in mind, but since we're on the topic of Halo levels, I want to get out probably my favorite Halo level from any game in Halo 3, which is the Storm, which is the one where you fight the Scarab on the mongoose.
Oh yeah.
Probably my
Yes.
favorite Halo level, and I think the biggest reason is that it's perfectly paced. Like it
Oh,
starts
yeah.
off, you're like with a bunch of buddies, and it starts off in kind of smaller interiors, and then it kind of builds up to like more outside areas, and then it just ends on this massive like finisher.
Wonderful
And
sense
then
of scale.
yes, and it just like it builds really really well. It's like so well paced. There's a good amount of like and just the music.
Music.
Oh
Always
God.
the music.
Always the music. Mario, my man. Anyway, that's also what I love about Halo. One thing that I don't like about 3 and 4 is that they try to incorporate Marines as much as possible, so you're not just fighting by yourself. I love having this feeling of like you're in a war with other people, and it's not just you. You have people on either side of you, even if they're completely useless. It's wonderful little like window dressing, and it sets up little stories, these little like story beats during the battle. So it almost feels like there's its own mini story. Like there are chances for you to save Marines on your journey if you want to, and it just kind of adds a little bit of heroic spice, I guess. And it's a good mix of like on foot and vehicles, and it's just I love it so much. it's again, it's like for me, it's like a perfect first person shooter level. Like I
Yeah.
literally have no complaints. Being able to take down this giant like quadrupedal robot with nothing but a rocket launcher and a tiny little four-wheeler just gives you this like awesome, like I'm a badass feeling.
The reveal too, like the build up to it, stomping, and Sergeant Johnson's like, "What the hell is that noise?" And then it comes over, and it's like, "Oh my god, that's what they look like now."
Yep.
And it's a great visual having this giant like four-legged robot just crushing everything, and then having a bunch of little guys on four-wheelers with rocket launchers just like scurrying around trying to make something work. And then
that sounds amazing.
Oh my god, it's great. And then like you have to actually jump on top of it, so you have to like run your mongoose like way up in the air, get some air, and then hop off and then take it out from the. It's awesome. It's like one of my favorite like first person shooter levels ever. And I've talked about Halo 3 before. I just want to say this one last thing, Ryan. I'm sorry.
I want to give it props for something you were just talking about, Wyatt.
Okay.
It's I think with set piece levels like that, you often get the problem of you don't have like you're not actually doing and making the decisions that lead to that. That level specifically does such a great job of like you are always the one in control of what's going on.
Yep.
It is not like cutscening the cool things you're doing. It is you are doing the cool things.
It felt like an apology for how the Scarab quote unquote boss battle was designed in Halo 2. Which is like and as a whole, I actually really like that mission, like Outskirts, where kind of you go from like crash landing, then you're kind of going through the whole city. I like that mission as a whole, but that last like Scarab battle was so lame. It's so lame. And this feels like, no, we're sorry, guys. We know how to do this properly.
All right.
Yeah, no, perfect shooter, first person shooter level. Excellent.
Wonderful. So I want to give a major shout out to one specific company. I'm going to talk about them probably another time in this episode as well, because I want to focus heavily on one specific game level that they did. But Monolith Soft. Some of the best creators of like large scale environments that are super interesting to look at. So I want to give major props to the Xenoblade series, specifically Xenoblade 1 and 2. So the context of these levels is that they are set on the backs of giant creatures, or inside of them, or giant living titans, basically, that people live on, and that is the world. And they reflect that. So there is this wonderful sense of scale when you're like on the rib cage of a giant walking titan and look up and see like a gigantic mountain-sized sword being thrust into its shoulder that you need to go climb later on.
No way.
Xenoblade 1 and 2 have such amazing environmental design. Like Xenoblade 2, there's a massive like walking titan that's you have to like climb various parts of it. And then the water level affects things of like sometimes depending on how the time of day and whatnot, it'll be walking into like a giant body of water. So parts of the ground will just be underground or underwater that you can't get to. But that will open up like new pathways. So I think that's Monolith Soft does an incredible job of making those environments like visually interesting and also actually have stuff in them. Like they're populated.
They're also helped a lot with the design for Breath of the Wild.
They did the design for the overworld.
Oh,
well, yeah, I will talk about that later. Breath of the Wild deserves its own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Xenoblade specifically, I think for JRPGs, which often have very static worlds, it is such a wonderful change of pace to see the Xenoblade philosophy to world design. And yeah, them translating that to games like Breath of the Wild later on is really, really cool, which I'm sure we'll get into when we get to the Zelda portion of the show.
Oh, there's always one.
Inevitable Zelda portion when we talk about level design.
This is now a Zelda podcast.
Yeah. But yeah,
just in time for 30th anniversary.
I think especially seeing like, so Brett's been playing. What's the name of the dot hack game?
Infection.
Infection, and it had like that flesh dungeon.
Yeah,
that you were doing.
Disgusting.
But at the same time,
really
like
cool.
it looks really cool, but it's still just a flat environment that is running around. I think Xenoblade does such a good job of like having that cool aesthetic, and then also making it so like yeah, this level is insane. Like there's a bit where you're on the back of one of the Titans in Xenoblade 1. It's so big that you've hit the point where it's turned into just like a giant ice mountain, and you like end up sledding down its shoulder. I'm like, it's so much fun.
That's cool
to see that, especially because like most of those levels are optional. They tend to be filled with areas that you never need to go to for the story, but you can just go there to explore and like find maybe a side quest or a cool boss that you can fight. So yeah, I think that it's just Monolith Soft needs to be commended for their
just
amazing world design. All right. So Brett, you got something just stinking up your room, just getting ready, making it real hard.
Well,
to be there.
So I feel like everyone loves to talk this game up as if it's like a classic, and I did too. But then I played it recently, and I'm kind of surprised that I enjoyed Star Wars: The Force Unleashed so much as a kid, because oh my god, does it not hold up at all? Unfortunately.
You wanna hear a fun fact?
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Hey.
Yep.
All right.
I tried to play it recently too and couldn't do it.
It is specifically because which port did you guys play? Because I know they're all completely different.
Oh,
I played the PC ones.
Same.
That's what I have.
Same.
Okay. Are those? I think.
Oh, actually, Brett, I also played the 3DS one.
What? 3DS Force Unleashed?
What?
It's really good compared to the other ones for like a 3DS game. It's really good.
That's pretty sick.
I'm
well
shocked.
Because it has its own level design and everything. All right, I derailed you, Brett. Keep going.
But I'm pretty sure everyone has the junk planet, the trash planet.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I forget
That's
what it's called.
So I stopped playing.
You know what? I was about to, but I said, you know what? I could beat this game as a kid, so I will have truly become a horrible human being if I cannot do it again now. But it's just like I understand it's garbage, and I like looking at like the heaps of trash and parts of the level, and like it's cool that they're like parts of in universe like spacecraft and stuff. Like that's pretty cool. But you really need to look at it to notice it, and it's just brown. It's just a sad brown time.
It's also not fun.
Sad brown time.
It's not fun to traverse.
No, it's not fun to traverse because, and I really like. I have to stress this point. I kind of don't really know how the game was released in the state that it was. But like, if you have problems with clipping in your game and you make your platforms out of like coagulated trash, you're a crazy person. Because the amount of time that I just like slid off of completely flat platforms and into the acid abyss below, or just like clipped through them and got flung aside, it's like, dude, oh my god. Like that's the first mission where like I played it and I was like, this is
what happened is they were pushing the tech side of things. So they had the platforms be physics enabled, so they would wobble side to side. But if they wobbled below like the water level, you would just die.
I just
I
don't
think
understand.
that's what was happening. It was rough.
It's especially painful because like everyone has that moment where like, oh man, Force Unleashed, I played that as a kid. That was so much fun. What a cool game. I remember like throwing stormtroopers everywhere. That is like the Star Wars game. So much cool lightsaber customization, and then you go back and play, and it's like
not though.
It's not at all.
It's a fun power fantasy for a 12-year-old.
Yes.
Oh,
that is
when you don't know what makes a game good or bad yet.
Or when you just don't care. You might know it, but you
yeah.
might just be like, I want to go around and throw some stormtroopers off a cliff, and yeah, it does that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But the levels, not great. Aside from the 3DS version. The 3DS version had legitimately very good levels.
which is so weird.
Because they were
That
designed
baffles.
around 3DS use. It was very short.
I have so many questions.
I'll send you guys a video of what it looks like after this because it is wild. But
I feel like it would make
yeah.
it too sad to look at.
All right, is that all, Brett, for your Force unleashing?
Yeah, and the story sucks too. That's all.
Unleash the Force.
That's the end.
Yeah, what about the
Yeah.
the DLC episode of fanfiction where Leia's a Jedi and you got to go murder her?
Well, you see, that cost money, and I wasn't gonna buy that after the base game was so unfun to play.
All right,
Yeah.
Alex, you got another burning bad experience that you need to lay onto the world.
Another burning bad experience. Let's
Some traumatic
see.
childhood memory of anything level related. Just really scarring your soul.
You
Hit
know,
me.
you know what? I think I do. Ryan.
Oh, I know you do.
And I think it's the Halloween Town level from Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2.
God.
This is Halloween.
I can't sing it. I can't sing it because I realized that I can't
We will
sing
get
it.
insta DMs.
We'll get striked.
You have your 2.5 Mike Staclaza cover of "This Is Halloween." There you go. Make a whole loop out of that. All right,
You
go,
can.
Alex.
I think overall it's the straw that broke the camel's back for me with that game.
It wasn't the title.
It I was 12.
Says the person who thinks Returnal is a good title.
Oh!
No.
Oh, but what I think my problem with it was one, lighting. There was a lot of very lighting, and I think overall desaturation of a lot of colors with the enemies in that level
Brown.
as well. Yeah, lots of just brown and gray, and that makes levels instantly unfun to traverse around. Oh yeah, kind of like Skyrim dungeon design. Hang on, that's another one.
That's one
that's-
for later.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, what? But yeah, that and also compiling with the fact that there's just so many menus in a lot of the Kingdom Hearts games that child brain and probably still quote unquote adult brain me couldn't get around or bother to invest in. So I just didn't know how perks worked, and I guess that's where the difficulty curve kind of went up, and I just lost interest in trying to beat that boss.
All right.
How could you?
I also got to say that the Halloween Town levels in all the Kingdom Hearts games tend to look really cool, but be just very boring. Like that's kind of the running theme with the Halloween Town levels,
It was
even in the mainline
one
ones.
path. It was just a slithering pathway to the boss.
Yeah, the mainline ones is literally just like there's a courtyard you fight things in like 4 or 5 times throughout your time there, and like 4 different buildings you go into, and that's about it. It's just very, very boring, which is a shame because it's got some cool designs, but not a ton actually happens. All right, is that all for your Halloween Town trauma, Alex?
Yeah, that's all for this round. I'll be revisiting next bad round with a little sneak peek of what I gave you guys already.
Oh,
Wonderful. So Wyatt,
Yeah.
I
All
know you've played a lot
so-
of bad video games. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is gonna be Brett and I's therapy hour for a minute
Mm.
as I talk
Oh.
about Promenade from Modern Warfare.
Are we even? that is a multiplayer map. Are
It
we
is.
allowed
It is.
to-
Yeah, that's
It is a
allowed.
level. It is an environment. I'm
Right.
counting it because this level deserves to get crapped on for a bit. Okay.
so long as it's
I
bad
agree.
enough, that's fine.
It is
Yes.
horrible.
Okay. So in general, right? I really like Modern Warfare's map design. It's got a lot of crazy like secret routes you can take. There's like a lot of it takes a relatively small space and then uses every angle and every kind of small nook and cranny of
But
it, which I
Wyatt,
really, really like.
But Wyatt, what if they just didn't do that for a whole map?
I
For
also-
a whole
Yeah,
straight
but,
line?
I have
you
a
know, what I
legitimate
was
question,
asking
Wyatt.
for-
Which
What?
Modern Warfare is this? Is this the
This
original?
is a new one. This is the remake. This is not remake. Oh my god, 2019.
This is why it's so
The
confusing.
reboot.
Okay.
Modern
Okay.
Warfare 2019. Yeah. Okay. So the brilliant minds over at Infinity Ward said, okay, let's do none of that and give you a strip of road, basically, and then we're gonna just make it 3 lanes. It's all gonna be one level. There's gonna be roads on either side that'll allow vehicles to go there and literally nowhere else. And it's literally just this strip of land with some cubes that they laughingly call buildings in there, and that's it. And it hosts like 24 no, not even. How many
No,
players?
it's 64.
It's 64 players
it's a
in
full
this
64-player map.
tiny little, like, it is. When you think of 3-lane maps, I can think of no better example of literally 3 lanes, and that's it. It offers nothing else other than 3 lanes.
Maybe they were tired.
It is so bad. It is atrocious. And basically it's like it's their ground war mode, so you're basically just running to capture different control points. But there is nowhere to go but straight ahead from your spawn. There's no interesting like angles, there's no verticality. It's just people running around in one area and just pushing back and forth, and it's so bad.
It's a meat
Forward
grinder.
into death.
And it's also incredibly unbalanced depending on what side you get on. If you're on one specific side, I don't remember which side it is that comes to mind, you just steamroll the other side every single time. And the other side can barely keep up every time. It is just the worst. And I
Not
hate it.
fun.
And probably the worst part of it is that I get it every other time I play Ground War. I don't know why, but for some reason I get it more because it's like you don't get to pick the next map. It's literally just like random, like whatever map. I get it every single time. Like I'll play one game, and if it's not on Promenade, the next map will always be Promenade every single time. It's so bad. And I always make fun of older Call of Duty multiplayer maps for just being like just 3 lanes, but like this is the epitome
But
of
literally.
3-lane map design. It is just 3 lanes. This is it.
And
I
nothing
can't
else.
even and nothing else. It's actually a miracle that it was okayed for like release. It's incredible.
All right.
Brett, you got anything else to say?
Therapy time. Therapy time.
Nice. Good
Oh
trauma
my
release.
God.
So I do have a very recent experience that has given me some major trauma with video games, looter shooters specifically. We've talked a lot about looter shooters at various points in time on this show, and
I'm
there's
scared.
there's a new one on the horizon called Outriders. It's riding in, and it's a game I've been cautiously optimistic for because it's developed by People Can Fly, who made the Bulletstorm
Which is awesome.
remake, which is incredible. Very
Outriders
good.
riding in.
Yep, Outriders riding in. And Outriders is running a demo. And importantly, they called this a demo, not a beta. So I assume it's mostly representative of the final product. And the first area you're in is this like war-torn battlefield that looks very cool until you realize that you can only go to this very small section in the middle that is like cut away into the ground. The illusion of there being a lot to do vanishes instantly. It is very disappointing, and walking around is super confusing because everything's just gray and brown and dull with some explosions happening. It's hidden the same exact like gray-brown
Return to 2011
issue
graphics.
of return to 2011 graphics, and that's a good way to put it because Bulletstorm had a few of those levels too. But Bulletstorm's gameplay carried it, right? Bulletstorm was good enough to not matter if the levels weren't great. But Outriders, at least at the start when you don't have access to a lot of things and there's a cover system that's not very good and the area just doesn't have a lot of cover, and it's just also like things are spawning in random places, you can't tell what's happening or where you should be going. It makes me very sad. And that's then compounded by the fact that every door you enter has like a cutaway cutscene to open it.
Oh.
Not like an animation. You cut away and then it loads a new area. Like the screen goes black for a second and then goes into a cutscene of you opening the door and walking through.
This is 2021. We don't have cutaways anymore.
I don't.
Yeah, this isn't Resident
It's
Evil.
like
No loading
Bulletstorm
screen.
didn't
Just
have
have
that. What? I want to know what happened. Like, why can't we just walk through a door? Like,
Doors aren't allowed anymore.
oh, it was so painful. Which is a shame because I think it legitimately is like bad enough to make me not want to continue playing the game because it's every area so far is like that, where it's just like very tight spaces. It's got like a Division-esque cover system, but it's not as good as the Division. There's none of the openness of the Division. It then locks you into these tiny like arena corridors that feel directly out of like a Mass Effect multiplayer. Like, that's the closest comparison I can make. And those levels worked in Mass Effect multiplayer. I don't think they worked in Outriders. It was a sad experience. Game's kind of fun, but man, those levels are bad. And it's not very interesting, and I don't think it would get better. That's my biggest concern, is because like it says world tier and everything, like it's open world. It's not open world because there's a cutscene every 10 seconds when you're wandering around.
It's a shame.
It's especially bad when like it literally will just transition you from combat arena to combat arena, and they're all the same. It's all just a sequence of waist-high cover smattered around the field, with a big open area in the center, and then a bunch of enemies that run at you or stand behind cover 1,000 miles away. It's just very, very boring. Compounded by the fact that the enemies kind of feel like aimbots, which is really weird, because I think we solved that issue a long time ago. But enemies here just kind of target you and you're not really sure from where. So yeah, it's got some problems. I want the game to be good, but it's got some problems, and specifically the level design is really just subpar. Hurts my soul a little bit.
Well,
all right.
I'm glad you got that off your chest.
Yeah, it deeply offended me. Very deeply. So Brett, I want you to tell me something that's brightened your day a little bit, that hasn't deeply offended you.
Well, I know something that has consistently offended us so far has been sad brown hallways. Has kind of been a consistent theme of just things that we really don't like. I'm gonna blow your mind for a second. Get ready for this. What if I told you
brown hallway?
A happy brown hallway. Not even a happy brown hallway, probably the sickest, most amazing brown hallway you could ever possibly imagine in your feeble mortal brain. Now, Ace Combat 4 is a game that is 20 years old as of later this year.
Oh
So
boy.
I'm just going to go ahead and say it that Megalith, basically a ground-mounted Death Star facility, is probably the coolest thing you could have in your mostly realistic up until that point playing game, physically possible. And it is brown because it is shooting asteroids out of the sky that are falling onto the planet with laser beams that are mounted onto it. And you have to blow it up because they're going to use it on the rest of they're going to use it on the rest of the world because war is bad and that stuff. And it is like the rest of the game is like cool, like PS2, like kind of like synthy soundtrack. They just got a real choir to do this insane, like crazy, like church choir loop over this insane speaker destroying beat for this whole entire level, as you have to get through this huge squadron and then into this huge fortress that if you like fly a foot or two to the left or right, you will just clip the wall and explode and have to do it all over again. It's amazing. It is like I've beaten that game so many times, and every time I get to that level, I just like smile on my face consistently. Oh, beautiful, beautiful brown hallway.
Brown hallway that you fly a plane through.
Yes, and shoots asteroids out of the sky and blasts church choir music.
I mean, yeah, I'd hazard to say that, the brown hallway feels better there because it's mostly open spaces. So it's a nice contrast to the regular gameplay of an Ace Combat game.
And also nice contrast to most other brown hallways where they are not very open and they're very sad and cramped.
and annoying and horrible and traumatic. So
And very traumatic.
And everything wrong with the world.
And everything wrong with the world, yes.
well, speaking of everything wrong with the world, Alex, what's wrong with the world?
No, I thought we were on good ones.
Oh yeah, we are on good ones. Sorry.
This is the first time a Ryan segue hasn't worked. Oh my god!
Oh no!
Document that in the books.
No, okay,
that
let me fix it.
is
So, Alex,
cataclysmic
speaking of
event.
what's wrong with the world, what's right in the world?
Oh, okay, there we go. We're
Good
back.
save.
We're back.
All right,
Good
all
save,
right,
Ryan.
all right.
Oh,
We're
what is
watching
right in the
you.
world? You know what? You know what the exact opposite of water levels are?
Desert levels.
Desert levels. Something that I oddly enough enjoy. It's. I think it's mainly the aesthetic. Or also my experience with Uncharted 3. Because
Mm.
once again, that game just keeps popping up. Or game series. Because just using a desert the way that they did in Uncharted 3, the way that they did as a set piece is
Mm-hmm.
it's really entertaining.
You're talking about the plane sequence, like the carrier.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
the plane sequence as well. That is phenomenal. There's a lot of Uncharted 3, I'm not as big a fan of the story on, but I think it has some of the best set pieces in almost any game.
Yeah.
And I say that fully aware that I'm saying almost any game.
Yeah, there's a lot of good just in that one area. There's a lot of good ones. Like you have the
Yeah.
insane plane sequence, which if you haven't seen it before,
Which
it's
almost right before you're in an insane boat sequence or ship.
yeah.
Excuse me.
So it's this crazy set piece that takes place on on this like carrier plane that really just builds and builds to this crazy
Yeah.
climax. And then right after that, you get this great sequence of just like these really wide
These Lawrence of Arabia style, like beautiful desert shots
it's like
that
it's
you're
this
choreographing.
Yeah, it's this panning camera and like it's really zoomed out. It's this ultra wide shot and it's just like Nathan Drake just like stumbling through the desert, but you're still in control of him. It's
And then
crazy.
you get a brief respite, and
Mhm.
then you are on to another good vehicle chase level.
Yep.
I don't know how they keep on getting so many set pieces right, but they're good
Yeah.
at it.
That's
So good at it.
They're
Years of experience.
Yeah.
they're masters, honestly.
Naughty Dog's thing. All right. Is that everything, Alex?
For the good ones. Yeah.
So, Wyatt.
Well, I did want to talk about another Uncharted level, but I'm actually going to take a break from shooters for a second and ask you guys a question. Has anyone here played Monument Valley before?
Yes, I haven't finished it though.
No.
Chapter 8. Chapter 8. So it's basically this wonderful. It's a mobile game. It's a puzzle game where you basically interact with like MC Escher style structures in order to
Ooh.
like get your character from point A to point B.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's a beautiful, beautiful game. It's a great example of like using a touchscreen to your advantage to actually designing around it rather than just putting a bunch of fake buttons. But Chapter 8, aka the box, is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So it literally just starts off with this box, this very like intricate looking box. It's very pretty. But as you interact with it, you're pulling up different rooms, you're shifting things around. You start to notice that it's this entire like structure inside of it. And as the as the chapter goes along, it just expands into this giant like structure. And it's just so cool. Again, it's a level that really, really builds in. It just starts off with a simple box. And then as you're going through, you're like tapping through different areas, activating certain levels. It just unfolds into this crazy like extravaganza. And then at the very end, it all folds back up again and then the mission ends.
Oh.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. And I just want to show you, Alex, and just like get your reaction to it because it's absolutely wonderful. And it's example of something that doesn't have to be hard to be enjoyable because it's just so visually pleasing to see these things move around and and just see this simple object just expand into this crazy complex series of switches and all sorts of other. It's beautiful, and I love just going back every now and then and playing just that level because it's so like satisfying and pleasing to the eye.
God, yeah,
So
please send me something for that after the podcast. Wow.
will do. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Monument Valley in general has some really good puzzle levels.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is that all for Monument Valley, Wyatt?
I mean, I could talk about every single level in this game for an entire like 2 episodes. So
I mean, I
we
think a
should
good
probably
enough
just
thing
move
is like
on.
just tell people to go play it because Monument Valley is very good. I need to finish it.
It's one of those games where when people are like, "Oh, there's no good mobile games," I'm just like, "No, you're wrong.
You're
You're just wrong. I'm sorry."
You obviously
there
haven't
are
spent a single second in the Play Store.
You can say
there are
no.
so many good ones.
The Play Store's a lot of trash. A lot of
I would
trash.
say look, you know, whether you're a fan of Apple or not, they do a much better job of vetting like and getting good stuff on
I
their
was gonna say, yeah.
platform.
Wait, why did I say the Play Store when I have an iPhone?
Yeah, the App Store is better
Wait a
at
second.
actually presenting the good stuff. But all right, so if that's all right, I want to kind of roll with what you're saying about just like levels that are nice and enjoyable and not necessarily difficult, and just give a protracted note of appreciation to a game that is basically just one long level. That's Journey.
Yes.
Journey is basically just one lengthy, unbroken level that is masterful in basically everything it does. Which isn't very much, because Journey is not trying to be things that it isn't, which is very nice. But it does a ton of visual uniqueness, despite having a relatively limited amount of assets and like limited style. But it uses every piece of like art in its portfolio to make itself brilliant. Along with just like the fact that the entire game can kind of be played through in like 1 2 to 3 hour session of just exploring and getting through this incredibly fun to navigate environment. And that it's also good enough to warrant like generally more than one playthrough, because Journey has a lot to discover just by wandering around.
It's replayable.
Oh yeah, it automatically replays at the end. It's one of those games that like loops basically, just so you can re-experience it.
Cool.
His Journey's kind of meant to be played through, I think, in single sittings, then come back to it occasionally, and then play it through again like once every year or two, which is what I tend to do. I like come back to that game at specific times and just like replay it. And usually the whole amazing thing is you can tend to still find like an online player that will go through the game with you, just playing it, because the game has.
I didn't know it was multiplayer.
Yeah, it's multiplayer in a weird sense in that you have no idea who the other player is. You have no way to tell. You often multiplayer will start and you won't even know it because they'll be at a different point in the level. But sometimes you two will. It will connect 2 random players and you'll be in the same space, and you can just kind of follow around and communicate through little chirps, and you can kind of form like your own little language of like certain chirps will mean there's something over here, certain chirps will mean don't come this way. So there's some really, really cool stuff you can do with Journey system, and like the multiplayer of not knowing if you're even playing multiplayer until it happens, and then just seeing another player running around in the world.
Imagine that in a horror game.
Especially because like
multiplayer.
You can cooperate with each other, and your scarves will like regenerate if you're near each other and singing. So there's tons of really fun multiplayer interactions that can happen if there is another player, and generally there will be someone that is in your world somewhere. You just might have to find them.
And as someone who's been studying narrative design in video games, it's great to see that like one of the main focuses of the game was just following Joseph Campbell's hero's journey in its most purest, like distilled form. And you don't even know what's happening. Like a lot of people won't even know what's happening, but like, and it's that red letter media thing of like, you may not have noticed it, but your brain did, you know?
Yeah.
It's so, it follows it so closely, but it's so subtle about it at the same time.
Well, it's because it demonstrates that it can fit literally like every narrative framework of a hero's journey. It fits down to like the monomyth of exactly what's happening, which is very, very fun. Lots of cool stuff to look into with that. All right. Hey, Brett.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked about what's right in the world, what's wrong in the world? Well, we're gonna do one more round of these, and then we'll hit the end. But until then, tell us the worst level you have ever played. What is it?
The worst. The worst. Wyatt, you have opened the door. You have opened Pandora's box of garbage by bringing in multiplayer Max. I like.
Here we go.
Every single Battlefield game, it comes back and it gets worse every time. If you, I'm saying this to the audience listening. If you enjoy playing on Operation Metro, see a therapist because there's something wrong with you. See multiple medical professionals because you might want to get that checked out, because that is the least pleasant multiplayer experience I have been on, more so than oh my god, Promenade. I almost forgot what it was called.
That's a bold statement.
Literal 3 lanes.
Well, because at least Promenade is like sizable enough to fit 64 players on it. Like it's rather long. Operation Metro is like there's no space. There's not enough space for everyone, and it's chaos. It's maybe fun for like 20 minutes, and then when you realize that that's the map, that's the nuke town that comes back every single installment. That's the one that everyone wants to play on.
I wouldn't even say Nuketown. It is the shipment of of Battlefield, where it's fun for maybe one game because everything is exploding and oh my god, it's a mess, but it's kind of funny, and then it wears off and you don't want to play it anymore.
And the one thing that shipment has that at least they're like really short, but Battlefield is a 64 player conquest game. You have to drain 800 lives from the enemy team in order to win the game. Yes.
Oh my god.
These are typically games that span massive fields and like giant multiple objectives, but this is just a
it's one underground subway in like Paris or something, and like oh my god. There's one really beautiful section of it, like at the end. I think it's like the sea flag or something that is outside, and you get to see like really well rendered wreckage of modern day Paris. And I'm thinking of the Battlefield 4 version specifically. But all the rest of it is, would you look at that? A sad gray hallway inside Metro.
Yeah, I'm also inclined to agree with you that it's worse because it's so like it's a level that is so not designed for Battlefield.
Absolutely not.
Anyway, Battlefield is massive, large-scale battles with destructible, buildings, and it's on a huge scale. It's absolutely just
one might say battles in a field.
Battles in a field, one might say. You're right. This is hallway field, hallway shoot man, sad gray brown time.
If anyone ever played the war mode from Call of Duty World War II, it feels a lot like that, where it's just like you walk 2 steps and you're right in the objective as soon as you spawn, and it's obnoxious.
There's no strategy, there's no squad play, there's no vehicles. It's sad, and it is unfortunately the thing that comes back every single game because I guess people just like it. I don't know why. I don't know why. We're the sadistic generation of people that just wants to play that for fun.
Of all the legacy maps like Wake Island or Parasail Storm, it's the worst one that they keep bringing back.
All right. So after that horrendous field of battle, Alex, what horrific horror show do you have for us that haunts your nightmares? Makes every moment a living terror.
Ooh, every moment a living terror. I don't know about that, but it makes every waking moment.
Oh,
every waking moment.
I feel the big one coming.
Dungeon design.
Oh god.
Skyrim dungeon design, Skyrim dungeon layout.
Skyrim Pandora's box, eh?
I do want to say the majority. There are like 1 or 2 good dungeons in Skyrim.
There are.
Blackreach is cool.
There absolutely are. But see, Morrowind, despite its gray and brown hallway textured caves and pretty muddled repeating patterns, it did procedurally generated caves fantastically because there's so much
Yeah.
to explore, and you weren't given the arrow of non-possibility. I guess I'll say the objective marker. That being said, you did have to be in a mood to explore in Morrowind, so it's I go back there when I'm wanting adventure. But Skyrim, it's just maybe some of them have an alternate layer or way through, but it's just the snake that doubles back on itself when you
Yeah.
finish, and it's so gray and green and brown and muddled.
Yeah, I tend to find that like Skyrim hides the good dungeons past like 30 hours of randomness. Like all the good stuff is at the end or in very high level areas, and everything else is just a Draugr tomb.
Yeah, it's the good levels are at the final bit of every story arc in there, every developed side mission.
There's also a few good ones like the Labyrinth and whatnot, but those are also like
Yeah,
super
the,
in game. Like you have to be geared as all hell to do them. Yeah, I definitely I feel what you're in my bones. The pain of going to the 50th bandit camp and walking around, climbing to the slightly higher rock outcrop, and then killing the leader, and then running around and doing it again 20 more times.
It's bone hurting juice. Though I will say one bandit camp that sticks out to me as good, just that I remember offhand, one of maybe a couple in there, was one. It's situated near a bridge and it's an ambush point, but there's also a little pond or a lake or a river nearby with
I
a
know the one you're
trap
talking
door
about.
that you can go into, and I love going through that way and just silently killing everyone, just backstabbing
Yeah,
them.
because you can
like,
go
as
through
I
it in
go out.
reverse, which is
Yeah,
very fun. All right.
that was a good one.
Any other burning Elder Scrolls pains?
Pains in general, not a level. The
Too many.
Oblivion.
That's too many.
Where do I start?
I just a quick shout out to the Oblivion phase zoom for conversations.
Oh, yep. All right.
Have you heard of the High Elves?
All right. Moving on, Wyatt. It's your last awful map mission level. Whatever you want it to be.
When I heard that this was our topic of discussion, one level came to mind, and I wanted to save it to last because this is the crowning turd
Oh boy.
of any level. Now, I may be cheating a little bit here because it can barely be described as a level, but I hate it so much and the game is so bad that I'm going to put it in here anyway. I am one of the only people that I've ever met that has claims to have actually played Right to Hell Retribution before.
Oh my god.
The opening sequence to Right to Hell Retribution is one of the worst, most inexplicable things I have ever witnessed in my entire life. It is a opening montage of the main character just driving on his bike and doing things, occasionally cutting back to like punching a guy or shooting a guy or something like that. But interspliced with these cutscenes, you have playable sequences that are two of everyone's favorite things in video games: turret sections and QTEs.
Oh no.
The way it's cut together, it is so confusing. You have no idea what's going on because it's the very beginning of the game. It's awful. The sound is terrible. The song that the montage is set to is this one of the worst, just like rock like songs you've ever heard. Everything about it is terrible, and it's supposed to set the stage for the entire game, which it does beautifully,
It does.
masterfully, actually. Yeah, maybe it's not considered technically a playable, an actual video game level, but it has a turret section in QTE, so I'm going to count it. And also, who cares? It's Right to Hell Retribution. This game deserves it. So, Yeah, one of the worst things I have ever seen in my entire life, and I felt personally insulted playing it. So
All
so
right.
there you go.
Well, Wyatt, that sounds utterly horrific in every way.
What a
You
game.
have no idea.
What a mention.
Yep.
I didn't know you were gonna pull out the big guns.
Oh, I was saving it for last. The cherry on top.
That certainly is.
The crowning jewel of
Yep.
turdiness.
What a surprise.
And I dare anyone in this last segment of the show to top it.
Well, Wyatt, I definitely can't top that because I don't think anything can.
I
But-
actually played that. Holy crap.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. That's the whole story, actually.
All right. So I got a bit of a wild card final pick. It's less a level and more the lack of a level. And that is The Sims 4. Now, you might be wondering,
okay?
Explain.
what does The Sims 4 have to do with level design? And I would point you to The Sims 3, where The Sims 3 is primarily large, open world, small towns. Now, what does The Sims 4 do? Does it have open world large towns like you would expect the sequel to do? No, it removed the open world aspects entirely, and now every single building in the game is an instance.
What?
Now, what this means is every time you go through to a different building, you get 2 loading screens. One of leaving your building, and another of entering the other building.
What?
So now, it has one benefit: the areas can be more complex on their own. But the massive detriment is that you now have this massive feeling of separation of everything. And I think that is by far the worst part of that game. It is the single thing that like continually irks me. Because they've tried to make bigger levels now, but it's becoming very clear the Sims 4's engine just doesn't support it. Like, it's just not capable of doing it, which is a shame. Because, like, they did it with The Sims 3 many years ago. Makes me very sad. Yeah, I'm a very disappointed boy. I just want my town that I can go and then go to I buy a cafe. The cafe's now in the town. You can see people going to and from it. But no, that we can't do that anymore. The technology's not there. It's been taken away from us. All right.
All right, DICE. Jeez.
They've removed the capability from the Matrix. All right.
Yeah, we expected so much more from. Oh.
Yeah, Maxis, you're known for your great level design. I mean, all right. After that crown jewel of turdiness, we now have the crowning jewel of shininess.
Good segue.
Of actual good.
You got it.
We got to end on a high note. So
Have
Brett,
to end on a high note.
what's your final high note for a level that is so wonderful that you just stay up at night thinking about playing that level, just wanting to go back and play it again?
When I was in middle school, I'd used to be obsessed with this video of the song "The Final Countdown" being put instead of the soundtrack to the last level of Halo 3. And I used to sit and I used to watch this video over and over again and think it was the coolest thing that all the warthog jumps were timed with beats in the song. And to this day, I think from the Pelican crash at the beginning to the Warthog run at the end, that is probably my favorite single mission in anything ever. It is legitimately like the music in the beginning with how like, yes, this is the same thing. Speaking of the Forerunner architecture from earlier, this is the same big pyramid thing from Halo 1. The music's playing. You will tear up now. The game is over. Goodbye. It gets me every single time. It's so good and very like hard on Legendary, but that's what it's supposed to be. And there's also that Easter egg of the guy, the dev in his underwear, off to the side that you can find if you rocket jump. I do that every time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Just most of Halo 3, just very good levels, but man, the end. Whew.
Culmination of the best parts, gotta say.
All right.
If you just forget that the level Cortana exists. Yeah.
Look, well, that's easy to forget. So
it's very easy to forget. Listen, we forgot about it.
I did not remember it until literally right now.
It's gone.
I was thinking about it before when I was making the list, and I was like, I don't hate it that much because I know exactly what to do.
It's too
just
forgettable.
Get through fast now. It's just it's forgettable. It's not the worst. It's just forgettable.
All right, Alex, what's your shining gem?
My shining gem, I had that a lot earlier. It was the train level. That's my epitome of well designed.
Then what's your diamond in the rough?
My diamond in the rough. This is, I guess it's a little bit more handing it off to the abilities that you can get in the game, but I also just think the in-depth map design of it in general is pretty good. A lot of the levels in Dishonored and Dishonored 2, how they handle map layout and things like that. You get a really satisfying amount of just maneuverability and exploration through these areas of either Dunwall or this seaside town. It's really replayable.
Absolutely.
And I'm a sneaky boy. I love stealth.
I gotta say, Arcane does a wonderful job at that. Like, Dark Messiah of Might and Magic too, the very old RPG they made, also has the same benefits of levels just being very fun. But yeah, I think sandbox level design like that is one of the hardest things to do in design, and it's also one of the most rewarding when people get to see it.
Yeah, wow.
Because it means I can go back and replay Dishonored for the third, fourth time maybe at this point, and I still see new things. Like,
I wish I've been able to finish the game, because like it's being first person, I do get a little nauseous with the motion controls.
True. Yeah,
for it.
I get that.
And I've tried to finish both 1 and 2 now, and on the final missions of both of them, my saves have corrupted twice.
Oh, that's.
Alex, so unlucky with that.
Finish them.
Wow, that sounds like an issue I would have. What happened?
No, why you get the visual bugs? Alex gets the save corruptions.
It's almost worse. That is worse. Excuse me.
Save corruptions you can't play. Yeah, that's a shame.
You can't get on your horse. I can't kill the BBEG.
Yeah, and I'd append Hitman to those two. Like, Hitman follows the exact same philosophy as Dishonored does with level design.
I watch a lot. I haven't played any of the games, though. Now I am seriously considering getting 3 because you said train level.
Hey, you can also, if you get 3, you can pick up the DLC on sale to play 1 and 2 in 3.
Ooh.
Yeah, Hitman games are all the content of every game can be played within each one. So,
including the elusive targets.
No, elusive targets are the one exception, because those are like timed contract things with actors, so they are a different thing. But all the other stuff. Bean. So do I. But yeah, that especially like Dishonored 1 has some really, really tightly designed levels. And man, you're making me want to go back and play it now. All right, if that's all, Wyatt, what is your crown gem?
I think it comes down to it's the opening section of the game, and I think it does such a beautiful job of like setting you up for what the entire game is going to be like, and that's the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild.
Wyatt, I was gonna say that if you weren't, and ooh, it's so good.
It's my favorite area in the entire game because I feel like it's the most densely packed with detail and things to find and things to do. And it does such a beautiful job of preparing you as a brand new player to what the entire experience is going to be like. And that opening like camera shot of the entire like world with like the title crawl and everything, it's wonderful.
Beautiful.
And it's great because as soon as that like camera shot happens, you have immediate control and you can do whatever you want to do. It like instantly just gives you the reins, and that's it. And it's wonderful. It's such a great way to start the game because again, it's so densely packed, but it also there's so much room for you to experiment and really learn about everything before you move on.
What's that, champ? You want to go ahead and defeat Ganon in your undies? Grab a broom handle and go be a sport.
But this is even before that because you're not allowed to leave the Great Plateau until you get the paraglider, right? And so you're just kind of figuring out the world in this little area, and
Sounds like someone who hasn't glitched through walls to me.
And it's just wonderful because again, like it has a little bit of everything. It has like a nice foresty area. It has some like ruined buildings. It has some like nice wide open fields. It has like snowy mountains where you kind of have to deal with like how the temperature and the weather works and stuff like that. It has a good variety of enemies. It's just wonderful, 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 wonderful.
You know, I haven't revisited that since I've started the game, and I kind of want to now.
Yeah, and I gotta add, just like Breath of the Wild in general, I think the world itself, and again, Monolith Soft is made up of masters at what they do. Like some of the absolute best environmental design people ever anywhere, if not the best. Because like for me, Breath of the Wild, without the level design, is not a 10 out of 10 game. Like I think even if everything else was bad, like the narrative could be dog trash.
I mean, it kind of is.
I mean, it's not offensively that bad, but if the narrative was offensively bad, if the rest of the game was just not interesting, and it was just like the world and puzzle design that was still that good, the game could still be a 10 out of 10 to a lot of people.
Yeah, they do this incredible.
That good.
They do this. I don't know how they did this, but seemingly at every single, like wherever you step, whatever angle you seem to be looking at, there's always something in the distance that's like calling to you. There's always something mysterious to look at and go explore. There's never a moment where you look around and you're like, oh, this looks really boring. No, there's always something off in the distance that is like calling your name, and you just want to go and see what it is. It's beautiful. Like all of the major locations, you can see them from almost any angle. And so I've never played a game that wants you to explore more than
super effective at driving you to explore.
Yeah,
and especially props to like the different area designs, even within just the Great Plateau, of it like condensing down the different environments you'll face into this very small space.
And that's why I specifically said Great Plateau, because it feels like everything, it's the most densely packed area in the entire game with so much variety. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and actually I said the map was what gave Breath of the Wild a 10 out of 10. You know, the thing that actually gave it a 10 out of 10, shield sledding. That's it. That is the 10 out of 10 game mechanic.
And I will say about this, the shield sliding as well, is that you can do it right from the start. It's not something you have to unlock in a skill tree.
You just got to accidentally do the button presses.
But if you're like me and you didn't discover it for a lot of the game, and then all of a sudden there are these people randomly in a field with a nice slope, and they just tell you about it. You have to explore it. You can do it from the outset. You know what to do, or you just figured out how to do it randomly. But they do teach you in the game, but they don't shove it. They don't shove it in your face. You have to go out and you have to explore.
They don't pop shove it. Get it? Because it's a skateboarding move.
Okay.
Right.
I quit.
Just
I had to take the Alex pun.
Just let Alex. No, just let Alex do it. Okay. All right.
His power's spreading.
It is not a one-man job to spread.
But only one man does it well, is what I'm saying.
All right. So I gotta crown this entire discussion with a discussion of the one game that does environments perfectly with 0 issues. That's Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is... I'm glad Wyatt mentioned Breath of the Wild, because this was my backup, because I think Breath of the Wild absolutely needs to be talked about. But Outer Wilds is, I think, the only game I've ever seen where it is just level design. There is no progression. There is nothing to learn aside from exploration. Like, you go around and you have 20 minutes to get the most out of this level that you can, of this seamless large world. And it is incredible. Like, there are tons to explore. You can get anywhere in the solar system. This tiny, like, condensed toy box solar system. at
I'm
any
sorry,
point in the
what?
game. Yeah, Outer Wild takes place in a small solar system, and you have like 22 minutes before the sun explodes.
Oh,
and you
and the
you
whole
have to
solar
explore.
system is a puzzle.
Yep, it's
It's
one giant
amazing.
puzzle that you slowly piece together. In whatever order you discover things, it'll add
that's
your discoveries to a flowchart so you can see like what
yes.
you need to find, but you can find any of it from the very start. Like you could complete the game in one run if you really wanted to, and were good enough at figuring out what to do, which is near impossible. In fact, I'd be surprised if anyone that didn't already know the game had done that. But there's tons of cool stuff. Like the very first loop that I did in that game, I saw a comet go by, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if I can just chase that in my spaceship. And this was before I knew the game would loop after 20 minutes, because I just kind of picked it up on a whim. I landed on the comet and was able to wander around it and then discover that inside the comet was actually a structure built into this flying piece of rock that you have to land on at like weird speeds. And so I explored for like 5 minutes in there and couldn't figure out what to do. So I walked out and realized that my ship was too big to fit on the comet. So it had detached and gone off in the other direction. And then I looked at the sun and it exploded.
Oh no!
And that memory will always be with me.
And then I looked at the sun and it exploded.
Yep.
Wow.
Outer Wilds is phenomenal.
What a game.
I wish I could delete my memory just so I could play that game for the first time again.
Yet another thing I need to play.
Yeah,
You
it is
really do, dude.
100% a game that everyone should try and play at least once. It is one of the few games I've seen that takes advantage of being a video game in such a natural way that so few games can actually achieve. And like the one shortcoming of the game is that its story is set 1,000 years in the past. But even then, that's not really a problem. It's just a narrative quibble. But the game itself is
It's not a spoiler?
absolutely phenomenal. No, because you're an archaeologist, basically.
Yeah.
So you're discovering what happened to like a civilization in the past, essentially. Which is like you learn that within the first 10 minutes of the game, easily. So, yeah, and the developers themselves talked about it and were like, yeah, that's the biggest mistake we made is making the story primarily about something past events and not current events.
It doesn't even matter though.
But it doesn't matter because the game is so
good. Yeah.
wonderful at exploration, and again, great use of music. Like different people having different instruments that you can find them by listening for their like banjo in the sky by pointing your binoculars out and tuning to their musical instruments to go find the NPCs you can talk to. Yeah, incredible game. All right, and with that, we're to shoutouts.
Shout out time.
So Wyatt, we're gonna go reverse order.
Whoa,
what's your shout out this week?
My shout out is going to be to another just little mention of another great level that we didn't get to squeeze in. Effect and Cause from Titanfall 2. Not even going to say why it's good.
Because you got to find it out.
Just go play it.
Just go play it.
Just go play it.
It's probably one of the best first-person shooter levels I've ever played. So just go play
I had
it.
that on my list too.
Yep.
All right.
I couldn't say anything about it though.
Alex.
Yep.
The pained cry.
Just stretching. It's more of a tame one today. Shout out to some pierogies I had for dinner.
Oh,
wonderful.
You didn't invite me. How could you?
Well, I made a quiche. I was just having, it's been a bit of a rough day, so I had frozen dinner pierogies. But
there you go.
Still good though.
Yeah.
All right, Brett, what you got for us?
The other day, on a whim of sorts, I started playing Metal Gear Solid 2 for the first time.
Oh my god!
Because I finished the first one, I loved it, and I said I will absolutely finish this series, and it's remained mostly, except for like a few things that mostly everyone knows, completely unspoiled. So I know, and this isn't a surprise at all. I know that like the big rub is that you play as Snake for like 3 hours, and then the rest of the game is Raiden. But I like Red, so it's okay.
It's 3. I didn't even think it was that long. Wow.
Well, right now I'm 3 hours in, and I'm still Snake. So I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's a decent portion of the game. It was like it's a few hours.
it is pretty sick. If I had played the whole game, I would probably put it in the level design discussion, because just the first boat is so it's just as well designed as Shadow Moses, which was also on the
Ooh.
list, but is only going to get honorable mention for obvious reasons because it's the
Yeah.
whole game. But yeah, I can't wait to finish that.
All right, I gotta give major shout out to the Final Fantasy XIV community in general. It's the nicest people in any MMO I've ever played, which they kind of have to be, because to play the story, you have to do a lot of very difficult content that other MMOs would not make you do, of like having to do raids to progress the story.
Destiny.
Which is like,
you don't need that for the story.
No, for the main quest, I got to do a sequence of raids, and I already have easily found enough people to do the full raid, which is like 28, just by being like, I'm a new player and want to do it for the first time, and they're like, we want to see your reaction.
Nice.
Like, that is the overwhelming thing in the 14 community, is like, people just want to see a reaction to the story, which is amazing. Like, I don't think I've ever played a game where people are that into just group content just because they care about the story that much. And having just
was it this way?
It's so good.
Was it this way pre-Calamity as well? Or?
No, absolutely not. What Calamity are you referring to?
The big reset button?
The FF14 Realm Reborn stuff?
Yes, Realm Reborn.
That's yes and no, because, well, the people that played FF14 before then, maybe, but I didn't play it before then. Most people didn't, because it was a bad game, really bad game. They then went to work for 2 years, got an entirely new director for the project, who's been helming it since, and has like made it his life's goal to make it the best game he can. So yeah, like the team now cares a ton. Like I mean, you guys have seen in the Discord, I've been posting all the music videos that they do.
Yeah.
Of just like wild stuff that they do. So yeah,
King
that entire community is just incredible. Huge shout out to them. All right, we did it. We survived the episode. As always, you can listen to the podcast 7 a.m. Eastern, Tuesday mornings, or 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv.
We've managed to survive every one of these so far. Congratulations, guys.
We haven't spontaneously combusted.
I can't believe none of the cyanide's kicked in for anyone.